And talking about Unquestionable Presence, was it the brainchild of Roger Patterson, as so many people say?
No, it wasn't. It was like everything we've always done. It was always a collective effort. It was never the brainchild of any one person. I write a lot of guitar. I wrote some of the guitar on Jupiter. I wrote a lot of guitar on Unquestionable Presence and Piece of Time. Kelly, he'll help me with drums. It was always a collective effort. Roger would come in, with a riff. Roger was never a songwriter. He would come in with something he wrote, and we would work around it, and he wrote the opening to Piece of Time, and he wrote The Mother Man, and the song Retribution. Those are his riffs, and what we would do is write around it, and build a song, and that's generally how we work with Jupiter, for example. The first riff that we wrote together was the opening track on Second to Sun, and we wrote that, and sitting in my basement, and then we kind of built the song around the riff. So none of the albums have ever been sort of the brainchild of any one member. It's always been a real collective effort.
But one can still say it's kind of a legacy from him, right?
Absolutely. He had a huge impact. He had a bigger impact, I think, on all the bands that say they're influenced by Atheist, and all the people. A lot of that was because of him, and his legacy lives on today. There are a few bass players even today that play with that power and that attack and that level of aggression that he played with. He was just so brutal and so hard with playing, and so his complexity with writing riffs forced us into a way of writing songs, because Kelly in a lot of cases couldn't play what Roger was playing. So we were forced to layer things on top as opposed to trying to play what Roger was playing. And his influence, for sure, pushed us in a direction that we wouldn't have gone in otherwise. So he had a huge influence, and that style, if you credit Atheist with being an influence, a lot of that comes down to him as an individual. And my drumming style, which is really Neil Peart from Rush, playing heavy metal, that's all I ever did. I didn't create anything new. I just took what I loved of his style and put it onto death metal, and
put it in context. Elements was a bit different, even more different, and it was a difficult album because you weren't playing there, and Randy wasn't playing there. It's kind of a difficult pushing time from the label, a lot of things, and it came out, sometimes it feels a bit rushed, maybe. Some fans didn't like it very much. How do you think of that?
It's a brilliant piece of work, but what you see, since we've done Jupiter now, and you listen to Jupiter and how it stacks up with the first three, Elements really sits apart as a really different album. And the primary reason is because Kelly and I weren't in the band together, and we weren't creating together, we weren't writing together, and that you can hear the difference. Jupiter, he and I were there working together side by side. Piece of Time, Unquestionable Presence, side by side working. Elements, we weren't, and it's a really different sounding record. A lot of people have told us that Jupiter sounds like the next album after Unquestionable Presence, and that's because he and I were always a core team in terms of arranging, putting songs together, not necessarily writing everything, because on Jupiter we had Jonathan Thompson and Chris Baker and people contributing riffs, and so, but the difference was Kelly and I were there to put it together, and my drumming style and my style of arranging too, because I have a big impact on how we put the songs together. I'll say, wait a minute, let's put this riff here, and then we'll put that riff. That's a lot of my input, and then how I put my drums to it. So I think that's why Elements sounds so different. You had a drummer they hired, just a studio drummer, to come in and play. Kelly and I weren't there. Tony Choi had a lot to do with that record, so it was just really, really different. Where Tony didn't have anything to do with Piece of Time or Unquestionable Presence. He didn't write any of the material, or Jupiter, of course. It was Kelly and I and the other guys around, so that's why Elements sounds so different. But it's still a brilliant piece of work. It's a wonderful album, and we play songs to this day from the album. But yeah, that's why it sounds different.
How did it took nearly 4 years to write an album? The next one in line, Jupiter, since the reformation of the band and all that we talked about earlier.
We actually wrote it in about 6 months. We didn't agree to do a new record until 2009, and then we spent about a year and a half not working very hard, and then 6 months we wrote the record. So it really, when we sat down and we got serious, it's time that we have to get this record out now. Yeah, that was about 6 months. So that's why it seems, after we started, when we played Wacken and we re-released everything, we were not going to do a new record. We didn't decide to do a new record until 2009. So.
Okay. Jupiter was a bit like Traced in Air from Cynic. They were both highly influential bands with a great legacy, and both were 15 years, 18 years, 17 actually, 17 and 18 years apart and not doing anything. But both records had a quite different impact from the early 90s albums. Do you feel it to be a bit unkind for people to criticize a new album, the band trying to do a new thing, pushing the boundaries again? Do you think it's unkind for them to say, oh, it's not as good as the previous records?
Well, no, I think everybody has their opinion, and there's no fault, or there's no, if you don't like it, you don't like it. We were fortunate that most of the reviews for Jupiter were very, very positive. It seemed to be very well received. I think a lot of people felt a sense of relief when they heard it, because they were expecting it to be horrible. For some reason, everybody thought it was going to stink, because I think, and it's true, I think most comeback records are pretty bad, and they most failed miserably, because you had a formula years ago and you try to recapture it, and it's many times it comes across sounding forced or contrived, where in our case the music came across sounding very, I think, real and organic and normal, and that's because we didn't try to be like we thought we were. We just started writing music again. I mean, we had no design whatsoever. It was very organic. And we didn't say we're going to be fast, or we're going to be heavy, or we're going to try to be complex. We just did what we always did. We just sat down and said, all right, oh, that's a cool riff. Oh, you know what would be cool after that is if we went fast. You know, that's literally how we do it. We just sit there and talk through it. And so I don't think it's unfair or unkind. If you don't like it, you don't like it. I mean, it's always been the way it is. A lot of people don't like Atheist. Mostly the new album was well received. Some people didn't like it. That's okay. Cynic had a different, theirs was a lot different. Traced in Air was a lot different than Focus, and Focus was a lot different than their demos. Their demos were extremely brutal. A lot of people have never heard the early demos they did. You know, super incredibly complex and brutal music that today would sound just as contemporary and technical as as any of the super technical bands today, because there's so many now. There's so many super technical bands now. Focus was a lot calmer and nicer than their demos. Traced in Air was a real departure, I think, even further afield. For Cynic fans who really loved Focus, yeah, many were disappointed that it wasn't as heavy as Focus. So in their case, you know, I mean, it's just that's the direction they wanted to go, and you don't have to like it, for sure. I mean, you know, I'm sure if Paul was here, he'd say the same thing. He's like, well, some people will like it, some people won't. I mean, I think it's fair to have an opinion, but if you don't like it, you don't like it. You know, there's nothing we can do about it. We just put the music together that we liked, and hopefully other people will like it.
That's a real attitude, you know. A lot of stuff has been said from musicians lashing back at fans, and we have a recent thing that happened with the Morbid Angel album, that Trey had a bit of a lashback at the fans, and it's not the kind of stuff that it's good for the music business.
No. Well, those. Oh, we have another one. Okay. Those guys are they can be difficult, and I know the album wasn't well received, and that they're just going to have to be big boys and accept the fact that people don't like their record. If you don't like Atheist, that's fine with me. I'm proud of it. I'm proud to, like, if you're my friend, hey, check it out, we got a new record. I'm proud to let you hear it. Morbid Angel apparently aren't, and if people don't like it, they don't like it. I mean, you just have to say, okay, thank you, and it's not for everybody.
Okay, final question, and the mandatory question. Future for Atheists, a new album after this tour, more tours, designing new things, keep pushing the boundaries. What else?
If, just like we said at the beginning, only if people continue to ask us. We will definitely do a new record if the fans keep asking for it and the record labels out there want to produce one. We'll do it. If not, then we won't.
Okay, it was a big pleasure, Steve. Thank you.
My pleasure.
This is Julio from Riff Magazine.